Hi everyone, and thank you. I will hope to share my screen actually to go through a PowerPoint. So wondering if a tech could enable that for me so the magic can happen. But thank you, and look, I'm really pleased to join you. I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where I'm presenting from. Because I'm from a border community, I'm actually on Wiradjuri land in New South Wales, and I'm talking about a project that is on Yorta Yorta land in Victoria. And thank you, I am now going to share my screen. So I'm great. Talking about a project that's actually happening as we speak, literally. So rather than talking about something that's been delivered, I just thought we'd go through something that Winton Wetlands is undertaking at the moment and just talk about our approach and our thoughts behind what the project is. So I'm the creative producer on what is currently called the Indigenous Art Trail project. Hey, so sorry about that, everyone. So to just give you some context in the site, so we are actually talking about a site that used to be known as McCowan, is now known as Winton Wetlands, which is in Victoria, Australia. And there, up in the border region, it is near a town called Benalla, and as well as Tamanick and Glenrowan, the Glenrowan of Ned Kelly fame, and also is a naturally low-lying area, so has the Warby Ranges, the Lurg Hills and Chesney Hills there. But also importantly for this project, it also runs parallel to the Hume Highway, which is the main linkage between Melbourne and Sydney. So for our project, it is all about bringing visitors and tourists to Winton Wetlands, and so that connectivity is really important for us. Just some of the key points there for you about the site, but I really just wanted to highlight that the history of Winton Wetlands is absolutely about, since European settlement, about dispossession of people, place and use. So it's a very challenging site to be able to interpret stories, but also we see that as a real opportunity to engage people to tell the honest history of this space and some of the challenges, not only for ecological restoration, but also the impacts on the people that have been involved. And some of those impacts have been ecological, and so I thought for some of you, you would like to just see that, you know, in terms of the ecological impacts, that we've had blue-green algae blooms there, and that we've had over 200,000 trees killed on site over the time that it was made into a lake. So the space really does show the scars of the impact. This one here is just to show you a 30-second grab from some drone footage that we took last year, because, you know, it just allows you to get a sense of what it's looking now. So you can see all the trees there that show the fact that they were killed off during the time that it was a lake. And you can see the pretty fantastic restoration that is just slowly starting to creep back. I was talking with some of the presenters before we come online about how we like to use our children as our tech support, and so I should give a shout out to my 11-year-old who did the video editing there. So now to just start talking about the Indigenous Art Trail project. So this is all about establishing a sculpture trail along a walkway that is near the hub of Winton Wetlands, our main starting point for tourists. It's very specifically about commissioning Yorta Yorta artists and working with that community and Yorta Yorta Nation Aboriginal Corporation to support the project and connect with artists that have a connection to the land and to that community. funded of course by the state government, and our current deadline is that it will be finished by August this year. So the pandemic had some pretty significant impacts on our timeline, so it's kept being adjusted. So we are well on track to be delivering by that time. So what I'm looking at doing now is just taking you through and showing you 4 of the 11 works that have been commissioned, and just wanting to highlight what we think they do in terms of connecting people with that country and with the Winton wetlands and the story, as well as perhaps an insight into some of the challenges that that involves. This is by an artist, Trina Ham, will be a possum skin cloak. And you can see there in the top right, the artist's sketch that she submitted for the expression of interest. So it's a central possum skin cloak surrounded by some sculpted animals. There on the left, you can see the work in progress. And for those of you that are interested in scale, you can see a full-sized ladder there. So it's the work itself is about 3 meters tall, and so is meant to be quite physically overpowering in a sense, but also allows you to get up close and see some of the details. For me, in terms of connection, what this work does for the site is start to bring the people back, because it's the people that were of the land that were wearing possum skin cloaks and moving about the landscape. But also the work, when it's finished, will have some detailing, some patterning, laser cut into the metal itself, and those patterns will be derived from Trina's research into some stories from the site and interpreted through her art form. So it's really connecting that historical use of possum skins on the site with the people who moved around. This work here is by a very newly established artist, Joey Beckhurst, and it will be a series of 3 sculptures, metal sculptures, silhouettes of kangaroos, and key parts of those silhouettes will be mosaicked. So you can see there to the side of your screen her test piece of the mosaic, and we've paired her with a sculptor who's helped her develop the concept into a more full-scaled piece. So to give you again a sense of scale, the image of the buck, the male kangaroo, will be about 1.8 meters tall. Look, for us again about connection, what I love about this work is the sense of whimsy, that, you know, it's actually, you know, pretty silly to have a kangaroo mosaicked, but also what we know is that this work will really connect with families and with children. And so what the sculpture trail does is draws people off the main path into the wetlands and allows them to start to interact with the wetlands in a different way. But also then for parents who might like to be in the space, they've got something for their families to actually enjoy. This work is literally getting painted right now as long as the rain stays away. And it's a rainbow serpent cut into the trunk of a tree. You can see there in the images the bulldozer that was shifting the tree trunk to the location that it is installed. So that gives you a great sense of scale. And Uncle Ollie Patton, the artist, he's never worked on this scale before. So he's taking a real leap of faith, and he's absolutely delivering. So the rainbow serpent is the maker of the rivers and lakes, and Uncle Ollie really loves to have this work on site so that he can encourage people to see the space in a different light, to see the maker of the space and think about, especially when he talks with people, to get them to look around and see how the rainbow serpent had created Winton wetlands and the rivers and lakes around there. Also, what we know is that, especially any of you that are watching or listening that have worked with artists, the community loves to talk with artists when they're making works. They want to know how they got the idea, how are they making the decisions, how are they going to finish it. And so Uncle Ollie said to me the other day that he would get this work done a whole lot faster if people stopped talking to him. But he's really enjoying it, because what happens is people then move from the story of the artwork to the story of the site and the story of Winton wetlands and its ecological restoration. So we really see the artworks as a way of linking those conversations to the bigger picture. And finally, in terms of the artworks I'm featuring, this is a group of weavings by Denise Bullard. So Auntie Denise, the woven baskets you can see there, she wove in the 1970s. She went to Nurringerry land in the Coorong to Rauken and relearnt weaving, and is credited to be one of the women who brought back weaving as a traditional practice to the Yorta Yorta community. And so this project, or this work, will be some woven pieces in the landscape. We are looking at planting around the space, the materials that she uses to do the weaving, and as well as creating not a yarning circle but a weaving circle, so that we're encouraging the community to come back and join in weaving and using the space for that once more. So my challenge as creative director is about how to create a work that still shows the hands of the artist or the creator. So you can see there on the side, there are two woven circles. The top one is actually a weaving from raffia, and the bottom one is something that we've actually just had cast in cast iron. So we're hoping to take that test piece, which is probably about the size of a dinner plate, and I'm talking with the artist to work out, okay, if this is what we can do with cast iron, for me it's very important to show the hand of the artist or the traditional practitioner in the work. And so now we're taking it through some other phases to see how we can make this work in the landscape. So really, for me to finish, I just wanted to talk about some of the challenges of doing this kind of project and working with traditional owners and First Nation communities to use their cultural practices and their artwork in a landscape. And for me, one of the big challenges is about timelines. Working properly with community means that we need a lot of time for those conversations to happen. And certainly COVID has given us a lot of time, but what it also meant was that we were all in lockdown. So those face-to-face conversations have been very much extended. But also, as we all know, with government funding, there is a delivery end date. So it's an ongoing challenge that we're juggling. Also, the reason we're doing this project is absolutely about economic benefit for Winton wetlands. It's about visitation and connecting people with the site. Yet also, I've had many a conversation with the Yorta Yorta community about what part of their culture they're prepared to share, because yet again, we are asking them to allow us to commodify their culture. But also the scale of the site. You can see in one of those images, an aerial view of the site. It's really enormous. So how do these small works in the landscape make a profound statement? Look, and for me, part of that is about linking it to, you know, the ecological challenge is really enormous. How can we make it seem something that people can connect to and feel that we can solve things? And I think art can certainly do it, but it's also a challenge to work out how those works can stand out for people. And also too, this site's very particular in that I think, as a creative person, death is throughout this space. Those dead trees are everywhere. They are beautiful at sunset and sunrise, but they also mark a change in that space. as well as you start to know about Winton wetlands and the dispossession of people across time since settlement, it's very hard sometimes to make it a joyful space. And so bringing works in that bring some whimsy, bring humour, and start conversation is a really great way to keep that conversation going.
Thank you so much, Narelle. That's really, really good. We've got a little bit of time for questions, and I'd like to start with, well, an observation, just listening to what Narelle was saying about how there's a lot of death in the landscape, and death is very important, and we mustn't consider art as being confined to good news stories or pretty pictures. Narelle, it's probably important to be thinking at this stage about the longer term succession of artworks, so that once that death becomes less visible, I mean, in a way it's a big sculpture now, how can that message be sustained so that future generations won't forget? It might be a comment rather than a question. So I'd like to see if anyone else has questions, and maybe Bill might like to unmute himself, or can be unmuted by Michael, just in case anybody would like to comment. Any questions from the floor? We also, I think if Bill's can hear us and can join in, I'm wondering, Bill, if any of that resonated with some of the stories that you've heard with Indigenous people in North America.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I go back to the comment I mentioned that Victor Turner had described the arts as the daughters of ritual. I am not an expert on any of these fields or a practitioner of them. I've read some things and talked with some people, Roy Rappaport, for example, and Fred and Edith Turner's son, Fred Turner, influenced my thinking very strongly. But it's all very kind of left brain. And so I appreciate the sort of thing Narelle is talking about, but don't have anything much to contribute to it, except to say that I think it dovetails with the case I made for the importance of performance generally, ritual and the arts, the daughters of ritual, in changing the world and making the world work, and bringing the world back to life, so to speak, world renewal, like the Aborigines talk about.